Earlier today, I showed an example of a batch macro where I was creating 365 Tableau workbooks. And that batch file created all of the changes in the XML file to be able to automatically connect to the right data sources. But when you want to put stuff up on Tableau Public, it has to be in a package workbook format. So I didn't want to sit around and have to load 365 individual files and save them as TWBX files. So I went old school and just wrote a batch macro to do it. I don't need Alteryx for this. It's just an old school DOS batch macro command. And if you've done it like I have for 30-something years, it's a native way of working. A couple things you need to know if you haven't worked that way before. So I'm going to show you in this video the steps required to pull this off. And hopefully it'll be a technique that you can use in the future. So to get started, we'll flip over to the screen view here. So when I created the 365 Tableau workbooks, as I showed in the previous video, I hadn't run it at the time. I ran only 1 month, but to do all 365 took Alteryx a whopping 30 seconds. So now that I have all of the Tableau TWB files, which are here, I'm currently downloading all the hyper files from my other machine. So I have a daily hyper file and a daily TWB. And one of the secrets you may or may not know is that the TWBX, the package workbook, is really just a zip file in disguise. It's just essentially what Tableau does is it executes a zip command, which zips the content of the TWB and then the content of the hyper or the TDE, whichever may be, and then creates a zip file called the TWBX. So that's what we're going to do in this operation here. So the way I did it was using the same type of technique I showed before, where I have each day, each month. So I've got these fields in here saying January 1, January 2, and I'm going to create several columns of data. I'm going to create the path to the TWB input file, which is here, the path to the hyper file, which is here, and then the path to the TWBX output file, which is in column H. And then what I'm going to do ultimately is I'm going to formulate the complete DOS command required to run the WinZip command. So the next step is command line arguments, which basically are shown here in column I. So we have a -A, which means add these two files, which is the TWB and the hyper. So this is the command line, optional command line parameters. The other final command, which is a complete DOS command, is in column J, and that's wzzip, wzzip.exe, so that's the WinZip command line parameter, command line call. And then the first parameter that you use is the name of what's going to be the TWBX file. And I just gave it a .zip extension because that's what WinZip wants to call it anyway. I could have left .twbx on there, and then it would be .twbx.zip when zip was finished. But instead of doing that, I just gave it a .zip, and you'll see why in a minute. And then you've got the next part is the -A is adding the two files. So each one of these commands, this complete DOS command, all you do is just copy this out and you put it into a batch file in a command line window. So let's take a look at what does that look like. I'm going to find a window that isn't being currently copied here. So you just make a batch file. I call it run tableau batch.bat. You give it a .bat extension. And if we open that, the content of it is simply what I just showed you, the column of data. So we have 365 commands of wzz zip with each of the parameters there. That's the output file name .zip, and then the -a is add file 1 and file 2. So it'll sequentially run through these 365 files. And when it gets down to the bottom, then I'm just going to do one command, which is going to be rename star.zip to star.twbx. That's why I decided to take the twbx out of the output file from WinZip. So when I have all the hyperfiles, I'll run this batch file and it'll take care of it. Now notice that in the batch file, I didn't put the path to wzz zip. I could have put the path, but wzz zip is stored typically in Windows program files, and when you have a space in the path, it causes trouble. So what you do to avoid that is you just basically put the WinZip directory into the path. So here's the complete WinZip directory, which is just C program files WinZip. And the way you do that to get it into your command lines is you go to your system properties here in environmental variables, and then you come down the path and you can edit your path and you can add a new path. And so here I added C program files WinZip. And because that path is in there, when I open a new command line window, one of these black windows here, and I do path on it, you'll see that WinZip is shown here at the bottom of the path. It's the latest part of the path that's appended. So as long as you have WinZip in the path, you don't have to put the path into your batch file. It'll automatically be found. So that's how you do it. And when all my files finally get copied over, that's 365 times 70 megabytes, a lot of information with a couple gigabytes, taking a little while to copy over. When I have them all, I'll run the batch file. Then I will have all my TWBX files. And just to prove to you that the method works, if we come down to my other machine and take a look, let's see here, package workbooks. Here I did one test. If I double click this package workbook test, this is the first one I did manually. You could see the file size is 38 megabytes. That's not bad because the hyperfile is 70 megabytes. So it's getting somewhere near 55–60% compression. But there it is. We have a fully functioning package Tableau workbook, and I'll have 365 of those. So 30 seconds to create the TWBs, then a little while to run the batch file. Shouldn't take too long. And that's how you can scale your Tableau workbooks if you have a situation like I do with a lot of data and you compartmentalize the data either by time or by category or whatever you need. So thanks for listening.